Welcome to the LA Goals podcast, Success Uncovered, featuring LA's most successful game changers. I'm your host, Essie Magic, and today we are featuring Shannon Gabor, founder of branding agency Clever Creative. She's worked with Warner Brothers, Tastemade, Starbucks, Netflix, and we're going to discuss branding 101 strategies for success. The reason being is because I find that people just don't understand branding and how important it is. So I feel like if you could take us back to the basics, that would really help a lot of our listeners. So welcome, Shannon, to the show.
Thank you so much, Essie. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, I'm excited for it too. Let's get right into it. Introduce yourself. Tell us about your business.
Great. So as Essie said, my name is Shannon. I am the founder of Clever Creative. I founded Clever Creative 15 years ago. I still pinch myself if that's possible. I woke up one morning, I was working in the agency space right out of college, and as a creative, have always really, I associate myself always with being the artist type, and was really fortunate to be in a position where I was learning a lot through the agency model of where I thought I could fit in the most and where I could add the most value. So I worked my way up, working on a lot of Burger King account work. That's how I first cut my creative teeth in the agency space. And then eventually went over to the brand side just for curiosity to see if that's where, as a creative, I felt like I could thrive more. And it was, both of them were great. Understanding both sides of the creative coin when you're a creative minded in an agency environment or in-house design. You start to really, I think, recognize where your brain turns on and where you get the most joy and excitement. And I think for me, it was connecting the dots between business and creativity. And while I was at Mattel, I was working in packaging design for Barbie and a lot of the global brands underneath Mattel's treasure of stories that I grew up with as a kid. And that was magical.
I was a big Barbie fan. So
you were?
yeah,
Okay.
I had the full thing, the car, the van, the house, everything.
I mean,
Yeah.
the funny thing I always say is, like, I started off working on Burger King, and then I went to Barbie, and I'm like, Barbie does not eat Whoppers. So it's the farthest from two brands you could possibly look at. But I think what it taught me was really just the ability to kind of access story. And I think that's where I'll probably start with when it comes to brand, right? I mean, I think I always love to describe kind of what brand is through the realm of, like, our human viewpoint, right? I think oftentimes when people are using the word brand and then they associate after that brand story, brand architecture, brand identity, brand pillars, all important components of building a brand. But if you think at the end of the day, a brand is the behavior in which you show up. Just think of it like that. It is who you are in the sphere of influence that you as a company or a product or a service live. So if you think of that as brand, in a moment, people should know who you are and what you stand for. So of course, when you think of brand in that way, it's how you show up, which should be super clear. It should feel compelling because you want people to converse with you, right? You want people to talk to you. And I'm personifying it, obviously.
Yeah.
But you want your brand to have a voice and to have a visual and to make an impression. So the way I always talk to individuals who are asking us to help them from the ground up at Clever, building the brand from naming to strategic positioning, helping VCs kind of protect their early investments and creating investor decks and really showcasing how a brand's voice can communicate its offering to get people to get excited about coming behind the brand, to invest in it, all the way through looking at a target shelf and saying, where can this new product packaging live? And what should that design do in that aisle? So we have a lot of fun at Clever. We are women-owned and operated. Like I said,
Nice.
15 years and running. It's crazy. I started it when I was 28. You guys can do the math. And when I left Mattel, it was purely because I wanted to take the leap of faith to see if I could really connect those business and creativity dots. And it was by far not anything to do with I hated my boss, I didn't like my job, I wasn't compensated enough. All of those boxes were false. So the only box that got checked off true was Shannon's curiosity to say, what else? What else is out there? And I think when I started to realize I like to spend as much, and I know you come from marketing too, Essie, and from brand, and from, working in a firm now. And I think I was always like the blue-haired girl gravitating towards like the marketing and sales conference rooms, wanting to pull up a chair and just listen to kind of what those marketing minded and sales ops people were saying, and not just be in the bullpen talking about trend boards and color. And I don't know, I never really felt like I belonged in one of those roles isolated. And that's really why I built Clever. It was really a selfish ploy to be able to, I think, I think it had twofold. I think I built Clever Creative because I wanted it to serve my curiosity, to see if a creative could straddle the line between the business side of the brand built, as well as the design creative side. And then I also was just curious about having the flexibility because I wanted to become a mom one day. And I knew that if I stayed in that agency world, I would probably have a much different life, and my hours would look different and everything would look different. And I didn't know if I could sustain that for 20 more years in. So yeah, that's Clever's impetus. And that's a little bit on branding. We can dive in any of those tidbits too. I'm happy to go deeper.
Yeah, I love how you described it though. And you correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you describe branding as a person, right? Is that's how we're supposed to think of it?
I think of it as like a conversation, a person. It's how you show up. And I think if you can be, and this is, of course, there's a lot of different methods and there's a lot of different perspectives. And I really am not here to criticize any other definition of it. But the definition that works for me, which has always helped me articulate the work that we get to do at Clever. And it also has helped me articulate to a new client opportunity to not get so tied down into a methodology per se. Just get down to the core of what that is. And as I shared, a brand is basically how you show up. And when you show up to a party, or you show up to class, or you show up to, I don't know, the kitchen, wherever you show up, you want to make sure that you're playing the part, right? And so if you want to play the part, then you start to look at your surroundings and say, as I'm building this brand, is it talking to a culinary individual? Is it expressing kind of messy, you can make a mistake when you're baking? Or is it technologically rigid and robotic? Like, what do you want your brand to show up as, from its conversation to who you're looking to attract eventually? So that's kind of how I see it. And I think it has to be human. And I think that when you become more human as a brand, you become more memorable. Right. And that could not be more applicable to the shift we're in right now and the inflection point that we all are sitting in.
Wow. You definitely have a lot of experience. You said you've had your agency now for 15 years, plus you were working in another agency before you started your own. So I would love to learn of what your biggest accomplishment has been, and what did you learn from that accomplishment?
Yeah, I've learned, and I've also failed a lot. And so I love to talk about, failing forward as well. I am definitely always feel like when you're on this opportunity to have conversations, I want people to understand that it wasn't never messy. I think from a success metric for me, longevity, I think sitting in this inflection period and this paradigm shift, by no means do I take any of this for granted. So I think that I am a very sensitive person. I am a tough cookie, and I definitely know my value and how to be sure that others value the work that we do. But I lead with my heart sometimes. And I think that and I don't apologize for that. I think that that's why people want to work with us sometimes, because we don't really look or behave like a typical agency. And that makes me really proud. But I think from a success, position, whether it's product defined or moment defined, I would say moment defined would be still open for business on November 20th, 2020. Because if maybe you asked me that question on April 12th or April 20th, 2020, I probably would not be as secure in my answer. But I'm really proud of being able to, you know, tap into the really survival of the quickest kind of method that I had to adopt early in on this whole moment. There's no playbook for COVID. There's no playbook for a pandemic or a downturn economy. What I've learned, though, is we are stronger and more resilient than we think we are. And today is National Entrepreneurship Day. So happy National Entrepreneurship Day to you, Leslie. But, you know, I mean, when you have a dream, you chase it. And if you really believe in it, you don't stop chasing it. And so I would say definite success this moment. Project success, I think being able to see a founder come to us and have this really precious idea and trust us to take it and hold it for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, what have you, and identify it, right? And put a name to it and put a logo mark together that resonates with their vision, help them map out their brand story, put words to paper, create a website experience to let the world know who they are. Like, whoa, how powerful is that? So very grateful for a lot of the startup brands that come to us, because that's how I began. And so I understand the preciousness of spending every dollar in the very beginning of a venture and having that risk. We always hope that at Clever, there's always a solution for you. So that makes me really proud to be able to nurture those younger brands.
That sounds amazing. I would love for you to share with us also if there's any story of a specific project or something where you see it come to life. You're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. I'd love, you don't have to give away the brand name. I know sometimes that's confidential, but I'd love for you to share, I guess you can call it a mini case study of some of your success.
Yeah, I would say twofold. I would say there was a recent one, and I can share the name. They're 4 amazing, incredible pharmaceutical guys out here in Los Angeles who had an idea to create a Gen 3 product in the hemp space. And it is a product called Untitled Sport. It's amazing. It is a cryotherapy spray that's hemp powered. So think of it like a biofreeze for the next generation. It's like way more innovative and way more effective, and it's all natural. So there's something really cool about their ability to think about the next, right? I love working with minds that are like future forward. So great group of guys, met them, highly competitive scoping process. And then I just, I showed up as me, and Clever showed up as Clever. And they looked at us and was like, we know we want to make this work. And that's always a really like admirable moment. And it also makes you feel like you are clear on what you can do for somebody. And then when you get to do it, it's even more magical. So we got to build that brand from name to identity to positioning with my incredible, I have a full staff. So you're only as good as your people. So my incredible director of strategy, Michelle, and our director of operations, Justine, and art director, Meredith, came all together quickly to really get that brand to market in 11 weeks. And that was during a pandemic. And that included everything from packaging design to a product video. We kept it on budget. We were able to shoot the video with another amazing crew who made it happen during COVID. It was a testament to, if you have the will, there's a way. And I think that was a really, I think it was a defining moment because it was also happening in real time during a pandemic. But it was also just a remarkably smart client who trusted our value. So that was a fun one to do. There's so many over the years, and we get to work on such cool brands, but that was a startup one. And then we got to work with the Beverly Hilton Hotel last year.
Oh, cool.
And that was cool because it's like, I think you also, being in your former role in life, your former career path, being on the red carpet,
Oh, yeah. You
walk through that ballroom and like, you can just see celebrities in the Golden Globes in that ballroom, and so there's a magic to that property. And they were looking to Clever to help them identify some really core, unique ways to differentiate themselves amongst the other hotels that were renovating. And as we all know, that, hotel is a lot of 1960s modernist,
Oh
mid-century
yeah.
modern. And so what fun is it as a brand agency to walk through those hallways and start to tell new stories, build out new collateral design for their in-room guests. It was really fun. So to work with a treasure like that in a city where you drive by it, like when I moved here from Jersey, I remember driving by going, oh, that's where they have the Golden Globes,
Yeah.
and like, I don't know, it's a cheesy kind of moment for me because I didn't grow up in LA, but when you get to touch a brand that has such a rich history, again, that's a very, very honorable moment for a branding person. Yeah.
I totally did the same thing. Like when I came here too, I was like, oh, that's where they have the Grammys. That's where Marilyn Monroe lived. That's where this is. Like I
Right?
totally did that too.
It's crazy. So I would say those two, just in the moment I'm in today, those kind of are the ones that are rising to the top.
Cool. Those are great stories. I would love for you to tell us some of the branding mistakes you see people make. I'm sure that happens a lot. You probably don't say it out of, you don't want to be rude or anything, but I would love for you to give us some little things you see that you're just like, oh, no, that's not good.
I think a couple of things. I think from a visual standpoint, I would love to ask brands to just not be afraid to do things a little differently and not follow the trend of maybe what a market has determined as what a logo should look like for a certain generation. So, I see a remarkable consistency, and I don't know if it's a consistency that's good or bad, but it's a sea of sameness. And I think, like, as a creative, I just know that, like, the world is your oyster at every given moment in a creative process. There are no boundaries. There should never be boundaries at the conceptual stage. It should be sky's the limit. Why not? And I think oftentimes there are specific types of companies or branding agencies that have a form factor, and clients find it appealing because perhaps they have a repertoire of clients who look the same, but they're in a similar industry and they've had, financial success, but then they start to look like the same body of work. So I think in branding, it's a phenomenal opportunity to be able to break the mold a little bit. Maybe you don't have to look like a tech company, even if you are a tech company. Maybe if you are in transportation, you don't have to look like function. You could look emotive. Maybe if you're in spirits and beverage and it's a highly masculine offering, maybe you can look a little female. Maybe if you're in gaming, you need to figure out a women tailored POV on some of your writing and messaging strategy. So I always look for the opportunity to show up differently, not just show up. And I think that, I don't know. I think that sometimes I see a lot of the same colors, a lot of the same fonts, and I'm not going to bash brands on here because there could be a lot of background information that I don't have. I'm only looking at it from the surface. But I do see a sea of sameness in a lot of direct-to-consumer brands in the past 2 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets tiring for me just because I know that there's another font out there. Like, you don't need to use that font. You don't need to use that color blue. You don't have to use millennial pink. Like, let's just push a little bit. Let's just innovate a little bit.
Yeah, that actually lends itself perfectly to my next question, because one thing I was curious about is how much do industry trends affect your area of work? Is it something where you just kind of know your principles and you can go for it? Or do you find at times you do sometimes have to adapt to some of the trends happening?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can live under a rock. I think that we always want to show up relevant. So I always offer up our clients and my team the ability to always put it through is this relevant to this consumer persona? We do love to get a little left brain and right brain at Clever. So we rarely will build a brand if we're not helping build the structure of some of their positioning. Or if the brand is coming in with a really strong POV because the founder comes, like yourself, from a marketing background, well, then we know we're inheriting good stuff. But you can't build a great brand on a bad foundation. And the foundation, a lot of the time, is some of that tone, voice, persona work that is equally as important to the definition of branding than it is just the logo design. So we definitely follow trends. We have to be relevant. We definitely see if there is a certain something that is resonating with an industry in the moment, and it's, our brand partner client wants to launch at a certain place in the timeline, and we're seeing a surgence of nostalgia, or resurgence of nostalgia, or we're seeing jewel tones via Pantone pushing a certain color at the front of the year. We're not going to shy away from it just to be like the cool kids, like we don't follow rules or trends, like but at the same time, I like to always push on our creative perspective to show our clients a volume. And maybe one of those directions for the creative work or the positioning work has to be very aligned with what might be expected, because you don't want to not listen to your client's industry. But then maybe we turn it up a volume or two. And then maybe the third direction is kind of a wild card. Like maybe we go volume 10, and that might be wacky, but sometimes there's some interest in the wacky. Some of the wacky idea kind of feeds itself into direction too, and you start to find a blend of things that are working. So yeah, we like to push it, but then we also like to stay relevant.
Cool. One of the things I mentioned at the beginning of the show is that people often don't really understand the branding or the value of branding.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for you to share with us some basic principles of successful branding, if you could narrow it down.
I think when it comes down to the very beginning, I think, like I said earlier, a brand's identity design, which is typically defined as their logo, color, typography, and photo styling at its basic, that can only be as good as its foundation work. So I really do feel like if you're looking to create something or invest in a refresh or an expansion of a brand, I would say invest in the foundation work as much as you do in the impression visual work, because they will help to guide as well as strengthen the impression outward bound to a customer or consumer. But I would say, from a creative design, standing on that side for a second, I really do believe, think about color as it relates to emotion, and look at your competitive space. And if you do see an offering of warm or cool tones happening amongst your top 3 competitors as you create kind of a SWOT analysis of your brand, maybe try something different. Be thoughtful about what color means in different countries. If you are a global brand, like there are some, specific associations with color that are not US centric. And so don't be myopic when you're choosing color. Think about it on a larger span, especially even if you're not a global brand. America's America, my friend. Be thoughtful about who might come into contact with it. And so color is a powerful tool. Typography, think about legibility. Think about, there's a rise in ableism right now in design, of making sure that those who might have some challenges can see it, read it, understand it. We are currently working on a transportation rebrand here in Los Angeles, which is really exciting as a women's agency. They're really looking to connect to their riders in a way that is vastly different than they ever have. And we're looking at the typography choices from the perspective of someone rolling up in their wheelchair to a kiosk to purchase a ticket. What is that? What is the legibility of the type? Where does it sit on a collateral piece? Thinking about design for all, I think, is a really important piece as well. But I think the basic principles are just really make sure that legibility, consistency, attention to why you're making choices for your visual identity design. And then from a voice and tone, make sure that what you say is how you say it. So just imagine saying your brand story in a room full of investors. Does it resonate? Is that really what you mean? And so think about word choices, think about tone, think about, just think. I think when you're doing a brand assignment, I think you have to just be highly dedicated to the process, because so many different nuances can make a very vastly different impression from one person to another. So take the time to build your brand. Don't try to rush it out of the gate. Don't devalue it, see its value for what it is and make the investment at the right time.
Yeah, I think that that's a really good point that you make there. You gave some really good tidbits specifically about color. I think also too, one of the things is that people don't know how to measure success with branding. Like we mentioned how I'm in the marketing world, and with us, it's, your CAC, your conversion rate, your ROAS, even bounce rate, you know what I mean? So it would be great if you could share with us, how do you measure success from a branding perspective?
Yeah. I think if your brand can be known in a moment, if someone can repeat a mission or your goal or your offering to another person in I usually say cocktail party, but those aren't existing right now, but even on a Zoom, if someone can quickly articulate within 3 seconds what you stand for, that's success. If people can see your brand as a solution for better or for solving something in their life or making them feel better, that's success. It means you're doing something right. So yes, there are totally financial, and I can't even speak to some of those acronyms as they're not ones in my vernacular. It doesn't take away from my intelligence on branding, but the space that I can influence as a creative director and founder of a firm is in the impression. How, what is someone's takeaway from what you're saying? How do you look? Are you modern? Are you relevant? Are you innovative? What are people's impressions of you? And then also, are you selling? I mean, we have that client right now who launched the cryo spray titled Sport. Fantastic D2C story out of the gate. They're now in retail channels. So now it's a totally different market, different person, consumer purchasing it. So being able to also think about, how can I be more successful with a broader audience? It might mean I have to change my messaging, or I might have to pull and push in on more this of the brand and pull back on this, because the person coming to the shelf in that retail environment is a different person going to the .com environment. So again, I think your success is also measured by your ability to understand how your business is evolving.
That makes a lot of sense. And you've shown a lot of value in all the experience you have, as well as your agency. Can you share with us, what is it that your agency offers that's different than what people can do at home? Because I know a lot of people think that, or especially early entrepreneurs who think, oh, I can just do the branding myself, and some can, but I would love to learn, what your agency does that really streamlines the process and really helps to take that branding to the next level.
Yeah, I think what we do really, really well at Clever is we can untap potential in a brand quickly, because we've been doing it for a while. So yes, you can absolutely, I will take a step back. I think that this is where the Jersey comes out in me, and not like the typical, new client potential opportunity conversations, but I'm a big believer in building the relationships with our clients and showing value from the immediate. So my goal is always to make sure that you are paying for what you need at that particular junction of your company. And I say that because a lot of startup brands, we're seeing a lot of inquiries at Clever in the most recent weeks, particularly on individuals who probably have been either, maybe their job came to a halt and now they have this opportunity to rethink about their destiny. Maybe getting laid off or furloughed has a gift in it, and now they get to do the thing that they've been meaning to do for 5 years, but they never had the guts to do it, but they're now forced to do it. So I'm seeing a lot of innovation, people taking those leaps, a lot of new founders wanting to create brands to market for Q2 21. And so I say to those individuals, make sure that you're utilizing all of your funds right now in the right capacity. I mean, of course, Clever would love long-term, opportunities that potentially are more valuable than others. But for me, it's being able to say, here you are, here's what you really need out of the gate. Then come back to us in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, either when you've raised your first seed or second seed or whatever your goals might be. And then let's build a facade of the brand today. Let's make sure the impression and the brand is equally valuable of quality and context. But let's not do like the entire piece yet, because you're also probably learning about your consumer, your R&D, your supply chains, your operational mechanisms of how the brand's going to go into launch. So I would say that, you know, the value that we offer clients is not just our talent of being able to build a brand with a lot of industry expertise, but it's our guidance and kind of our creative therapy. Like, I really like to listen in what the goals are of a business and not just create a scope that is one type of scope. We always curate and tailor every single scope, and those are built custom to the conversations that I have physically on the phone or on a Zoom. Like, we do not sign a client unless I can have at least 2-3 hours with them, discussions, conversations, understanding what your goals are. Because if I don't really know whose vision is behind something, it's really hard for me to create and craft that vision. So that's important to us too. So that's kind of our process. I think that's what makes us really different.
And if people want to get in contact with you, do they go to your website, fill a form, or how does that work?
Yeah, you can go to clevercreative.com and there is an intake or an inquiry form. You can also email us at hello@clevercreative.com. And yeah, and then from there, you know, tell us what you're looking for. We do have a little deeper dive intake form that helps us qualify kind of what your goals are, so we can set those calls up more effectively when I get on the call with those individuals. But yeah, that's the best way to get a hold of us. And yeah, we'd love to talk to anyone who's interested in talking about brand. That's what we do all day.
Great. So you guys
Yeah.
heard that. So make sure you check out her website. We do have a ton more to talk about still, but this does wrap up part one of this interview. In part two, however, we're going to ask her about how she gets clients, especially in the early stages, how she was able to get clients, because we know that can make or break a business in those early stages. Also, some strategies for success during the pandemic. I want to get into some social media and how, you know, your branding kind of has to adapt to different platforms such as Instagram or TikTok. And also just get into some of the obstacles you faced and how you overcame them. Yeah, so if you guys can head over to lagoals.com and we'll see you over there.
See you soon.